Hi, everyone. I'm here with Mike Nichols. Mike is from Vernon Parish, Louisiana, and he has been spearheading one of the most important nationwide movements in the United States today, which is dealing with carbon capture and sequestration. Mike is a biologist, a multi-generation Louisianan, and fortunately, he's running for Congress against the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in the 4th District. And as we go through this interview, I think you'll know why I said fortunately. Mike, welcome.
Good evening, David. Thank you.
It's been a busy day. You've been working hard on getting your name out there and getting known.
Yeah, we have the Veterans Memorial Traveling Wall in the area. It's over at the Coshada Casino, which not too far from where I live, and it's located in Allen Parish, the parish adjacent to us. But we escorted the wall to its location. Linda and I did, and we helped assemble it yesterday. And today we had opening ceremonies, honoring our Vietnam veterans, and also there's a lot of other things attached to that traveling wall, like 911 and a lot of other things that people are they should check it out. It's really quite the experience to be involved in that, to honor our veterans.
It sure is. We owe our vets a huge amount of gratitude. We sure do. Mike, what led you to run for office?
Well, Linda and I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren here in District 4 in Louisiana. I'm 4th generation. Linda's family 6th generation. Our great grandparents actually settled Western Louisiana, which is known in history as the no man's land. But things have just we're kind of a independent group of people, and we really don't we want to work and live our lives and not be trampled on, so to speak, by the government. And now they have this thing, the carbon capture, and it's really carbon dioxide capture and injection. Calling it carbon capture is like saying, that's like saying points in baseball. It's really not carbon capture. It's carbon dioxide capture and injection. But anyhow, that came about a couple years ago, and it has eminent domain attached to it. And I was already concerned about the direction our country's headed. $37 trillion in debt, and we just keep going further and further in debt, seems like. And it's like our leaders seem to be like preschoolers who don't know how to share their crayons, is how I like to say it. And I want to work for our children and grandchildren and try to turn this stuff in the opposite direction, where we're not so far in debt, and we can, affordable health care, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And, and also a big concern of mine is, our environment and then our land rights. I've been in conservation my entire life, and pass that on to future generations as hopefully better than what we received it. I've been involved in a lot of coastal restoration, a lot of forest restoration in the state, and in agricultural conservation my entire life. So now we have a industry and the government proposing to come and inject carbon dioxide with other possible contaminants from the emissions from industry who are located 100 miles away and even further. And they have eminent domain attached to it. So that's really that was the straw to break the camel's back. We were counting on using our land for our purposes and grow our garden and grow our livestock and take care of the land. And now we have a group of industry, big corporations and the government saying, no, we have a better use for y'all's land. And we're just not too thrilled about that. We know what's best for the land. you know, our grandparents managed to land, our great grandparents managed to land, and so have we. And we've captured more carbon because plants and trees and soils actually capture carbon. They don't capture carbon dioxide. We're 4 times more efficient with nature-based projects than these projects being proposed by industry, David.
You know, when we've spoken in the past, Mike, I think in a way that I would sum up your campaign is health, wealth, and note that both of these go together. And you talk about MAHA, and we've in the past also spoken about home prices. And I think health and wealth and home prices all go together in terms of what motivates most people, because for most people, their health is number one, out of their family and themselves. And then it's the value of their home, because that's the way, or their land, because that's the way they pass down generational wealth.
Yeah, that's right, David. We're concerned about all these proposals. There was no stakeholder meetings. Let's sit down at the table and discuss these things, how it's going to affect us, you know, our health and the value of our property, the value of our homes. And also, when you think about that, it's common sense tells you that if you've got a injection site, no matter what it is, of 250 million metric tons of CO2 along with all the contaminant stream, no one's going to want to live there, Dave. Who would want to live around a site like that? So it's obviously going to affect our property and our home values. And unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to affect our health in the long run. Sooner or later, it's going to leak into our aquifers. And we have sole source aquifer called the Chico Aquifer, and it serves Southwest Louisiana. You know, 1 million people, 750,000 people get their drinking water from there. So we don't have another source of water.
So to be really blunt, Mike Johnson and Governor Jeff Landry are completely obliterating the 2 things that are most important to people, their health and their wealth, because these are the folks behind this carbon capture and sequestration scheme. And if this is put in, it will destroy home values. Now, home values, as I understand it from the research I've done in Louisiana, have gone down about 6.6%, according to Zillow, over the last year or so. And that's not the direction that any Louisianan would want their home values to go. Now, you connect that to the health of people too. And there are areas, of course, in Louisiana where industry is already situated, where I've been, and people are dropping like flies. And that would be more toward Cancer Alley, the St. James, the St. John, Ascension, St. Charles parishes along the Mississippi River. Now, if that kind of industry comes to your area or all those pipelines, that's going to affect people's health too. If there's an explosion of any kind, that's the end of the value of the homes in the area for a lifetime. They're threatening the Chico Aquifer. That water is also your wealth. It's your health and your wealth. Because what people do understand about Louisiana is the water's everywhere. And if these what they want to do, Mike, apparently is store all this carbon dioxide in these huge underground caverns and tell everyone they're never going to leak. But everything leaks. Ask any structural engineer. There's no such thing as containment. With earth movement, as the carbon dioxide leaks, it forms carbonic acid, which leaches heavy metals and radiation into the aquifer. And that aquifer is mobile. It goes everywhere in the area. So if you get radiation in one area, it will spread.
Well, yeah, and just to, I guess to clarify for the folks, because people think of storage of natural gas in Louisiana, they think of the salt domes, our strategic salt domes down around Cameron, you know, the gas and oil reserves. But what we have here in our geology, we don't have these red salt domes or massive open spaces. We've got little pore spaces. And within those pore spaces, you may only have 30% space, if that makes sense, David. In other words, this stuff could travel for miles, the CO2 plume that we call it. And just this past week, I gave a graduate seminar at LSU, most stomping grounds for from a few years back, David. But the students, they were really had a lot of questions about, and the professors too, from the School of Renewable Resources, LSU, about all these things we're talking about. And I've been pushing LSU. I've been asking them, come on, guys. The LSU Agriculture Center, the School of Renewable Resources. You guys got to come out of the shadows and help us figure out the effects and the impacts, because we know it's going to affect agricultural lands. We know it's going to affect our aquifers, but you don't have a big old reservoir down there. That's one of the things that, and where they're putting it is occupied by salt water. So you create what's called a pressure front when you start injecting stuff down there. No, if carbon dioxide, no matter what it is, but especially carbon dioxide, because they compress it to what's called a supercritical state, which is, to put it through the pipelines, you got to be above 1400 psi to be at the supercritical state. But they're running this stuff for transport through the pipelines. They're pressurizing it about 2200 psi. And then to put it in the ground, you're going to have to exceed that. That's another common sense aspect of this. So I've tried to find out the ADM site close to Decatur, Illinois. What are the pressures that are required to inject this into the ground where it's already leaked? That site was the showcase project for the U.S., the ADM site, and they've banned injecting CO2 beneath their Muhammad aquifer because the showcase project's already leaked twice, David.
Was this in Illinois, Michael? Was this the Illinois project?
Illinois, yeah. The Decatur's close to Decatur, and it's the Muhammad aquifer, and their state senators voted 55-0 to ban it anywhere near the Muhammad aquifer, and the governor signed it. So that's a perfect example right there of what you said, David. It's going to leak. It's just a matter of when and where.
To talk to people pragmatically, you're going to be wealthier without these pipelines in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're going to have higher home values. You're going to give your neighborhood a chance to grow, to bring people in. With these pipelines, you're losing value, just the money value alone. It's insane. And Mike Johnson has spearheaded these tax credits. Well, everyone else is getting screwed, no matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, unless you're a billionaire or multi-millionaire or whatever. Most of us are getting screwed one way or another. He's giving these things away with tax credits. He's not on your side.
You're right. And, we talked about this in the past, David, politically. When the big, beautiful bill was being debated, we had bipartisan support. If you recall, I discussed it with you because we had, I think, the congressman from California, Ro Khanna, I think is, if I'm pronouncing his name correct. Yes. Yeah. And then we had a Republican from Pennsylvania introduce legislation to stop this nonsense, to eliminate the 45Q for the CO2 injection to storage. And we had 40 conservatives, including our congressman from Louisiana, south of here, Clay Higgins, in the Lafayette area. He signed the letter, but none of our other federal legislators, congressmen or senators, including the Republicans and the Democrats, and then we have 2 Republican senators, Kennedy and Cassidy. Nobody supported us. Nobody stepped up. And I personally wrote letters, emails, phone calls, David, numerous, like, guys, you're trying to pump this stuff under the Chico aquifer. It needs to be addressed before you agree to the big, beautiful bill. Crickets, David, they're like, no, we're not going to do anything, Mike. So I don't know if it's out of fear. I don't know if they were just fearing the president, or what the deal was, but we could have addressed it at that point, David, to address some of these issues, including the pipeline issues that you're discussing. And they just simply chose to disregard us. And that just added, impetus to me to try to get in there and say, look, guys, we could do this a lot better, than what y'all are doing. You don't have a very good strategy for looking out for the people. And that's another reason I'm running.
So when you say no one stepped forward but Higgins, are you also referring to Carter up in the Cancer Alley area?
Yes, Carter did not step forward at all. Cleo Fields, I was in direct contact with Congressman Fields' office. His staff person has family here. His staff member, his dad's actually. Sir,
what did they say? What did the
what
staff
did they
person
say?
tell you?
Oh, well, they were going to help us, right? But we got zero help in Baton Rouge with the legislature. They were going to help, work with us and try to address these concerns. And, maybe they did try behind the scenes, but we didn't get any support. We got no results.
Well, when you say try, when you say signing on to a bill as Higgins did, isn't that something if Carter had done it, you would have known? If Fields
yes,
had done
Carter
it?
did not sign on to the bill. I verified all the signatures from Louisiana, and Congressman Higgins, he could have acted a lot sooner than he did. But it's always easy to criticize. But my point is, I think they should have negotiated this. We had it to the House Ways and Means Committee, to the chairman, and if I recall, his name's Smith, Chairman Smith, the youngest chairman ever of the House Ways and Means Committee, and his family's from Southeast Missouri. And we were making those contacts, David, behind the scenes. So for them to pretend that they don't know what was being, what the concerns were, that's just not true, because they knew what the concerns were and they just chose not to address them. And by they, I mean, other than those 40 conservatives that we had, and we had 3 or 4 senators that were kind of with us. But when it came time to put their foot down, they just agreed to the big, beautiful bill, David. It should.
I think it's really important to connect some of the dots here. You're talking about federal Democrat and Republican representatives. So epox to both of them on this issue. Now, people need to also understand that this is about the whole state. We've kind of focused on the southwest portion, but Lake Marapas is being threatened as well by carbon capture and sequestration. And what people need to understand, it's like an octopus, and the head of that octopus is in Cancer Alley, and then in one direction, and then down toward Texas in another, where all the pipelines will come from. So you kind of have to be aware that this is happening throughout the state. And this thing about who's gonna make money off of it, just a few people. Homeowners are not going to make money. Jobs are not. You create more jobs with other ways of stimulating the economy. This will not create that many jobs for the state. It's such a poor investment. And on the state level, you were working with a number of representatives and senators as well on House Bill 4. And this was, I think, in April and May of this year. What happened to House Bill 4?
That's correct. House Bill 4, where we would allow each parish to be able to decide if they wanted this in their parish or not. We could not get the bill out of committee. The only bill that we got out of committee was to be able to, if there's litigation, if there's lawsuits, you get to have that in your home parish, fortunately. But, who has the money? What small landowner has the money to challenge ExxonMobil or Occidental Petroleum? I don't think none of us, maybe even collectively, I would say we don't have that kind of money to go to court with those, big corporations like that. But anyways, we got that. We could have it, hear it at least in our local parish, if you're able to find the funding to litigate or go to court with eminent domain. But House Bill 4 was just by our representatives in Southwest Louisiana and Northwest Louisiana, was supported by those representatives, and pretty much across the state. Once you get into urban areas and suburban areas, they voted for, they voted against us. They said, no, you're not going to be able to decide. We're not going to allow that. And what was interesting during the committee meetings, we had other bills come up. So you would have Democrat representatives from New Orleans area debating things that were going to happen to them in New Orleans. And it was like, when it came to their backyards, they were like, oh no, we're not allowing that. We're not going to let that happen. But when it came to doing stuff in our backyards, they seem to have this mentality like, what's the big deal? Where the big deal is, it's not this little bitty spot that they're thinking in their minds that, hey, we're talking about affecting hundreds of thousands of acres in the drinking water, that the aquifer that provides the drinking water for like 50% of the drinking water for Louisiana comes from the Chico aquifer. But they seem to be amiss on those issues of how, like, they've been convinced, oh, it's not that big a deal. Well, we live by Fort Polk military base. Well, Fort Polk, we lost a lot of family land, all our families, 100,000 acres worth, of generational property was taken for Fort Polk. And we support our military. You heard where I was earlier today. My grandfather was a World War I veteran. Linda's dad's Air Force veteran. But my point is, we have that already taken from us, 100,000 acres. Then we lost another roughly 100,000 acres to Kisatchie National Forest, which we love our national forest. But my point was to these legislators that, look, we've already paid our dues. We've already lost 1/10 of our parish to the federal government and to projects for the public good. These projects, these CO2 injection projects, are not for the public good. And anytime that you have a big corporation involved, like ExxonMobil, we should have a right, the citizens of that parish, to decide whether we want that or not. But we just got shot down, Dave. We just got shot down at Baton Rouge, unfortunately. And I hear that, the rumors on the street is the governor was working against us, so I don't know if that's true, but that's what you hear is why we couldn't get these bills through committee. And we got one bill through committee. It's 601, House Bill 601 was for the eminent domain for pipelines. And it was by our local representative. He's a chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee here in Southwest Louisiana.
Tell us his name and party affiliation.
Brett Guyman, Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he got the bill through committee, and it's a good bill. 601 would have, for almost 99.9% of the time, would have prohibited the use of eminent domain for CO2 pipelines. But even we fought so hard to get it through committee, and they refused to bring it up on the floor. Representative Guyman refused to bring it up. And I cornered him 3 or 4 times about it. And he said, we just don't have the votes, Mike. And you know how politicians are. They have a lot of ego and a lot of pride, and they don't want to lose a vote. So yeah, I do understand that part of it.
That's an interesting thing. We're approaching the end of this particular podcast, but I want to mention to folks in the next podcast, let's not give it away now, you actually met with Governor Landry. And I want you to share a little bit of that meeting when we do our next podcast. What's really important here is that a number of the supporters of your work, Michael, have been Republicans. In over by Lake Mariposa in Tangipahoa Parish, it's Ken Landry Coates, who has been outspoken and a strong advocate against CCS. She's a Republican. And people need to know there's a new kind of Republican, and you embody that person. You're running in the 4th district. You're running for health and wealth. You understand how these go together. Homeowners' rights. and you get these things. So I hope people tune in, and when it's time to vote in that primary against Mike Johnson, they send you to the top, because you will be better for 99.9% of the people in the entire 4th District. Folks, where can people learn more about your candidacy, Michael Nichols?
Okay, the right Mike. I'm the right Mike for the job. Do not vote for that wrong Mike. He's had his turn at it, and y'all have seen the outcome. But you can look me up on Facebook, Mike Nichols for Congress, and I also have a web page, MikeNicholsForCongress.com, and go on there and like me on Facebook and reach out to me with comments or questions, and I'll respond back.
Boy, folks, this is such a new kind of Republican. There used to be a few environmentalist Republicans. In fact, it was a Republican president, Richard Nixon, who began the EPA. The party has come a long ways in a bad direction. And if you want to learn more about my work, you can get my new book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins. It's available at Amazon.com, or use the link in this post, and I'll put Mike's links in the post too that goes with this podcast. Mike, thanks for visiting with us tonight.
Thank you, David. Always enjoy it.